Okay, hello, good evening, everyone. Good evening, Mike.
Good evening.
Everyone, this is Michael Hewitt. We've known each other for quite a while now. We met through my sister, because you worked together
That's right.
at USwitch.
Yes,
Yeah. So, and then from there, our relationship and friendship has just blossomed.
that's right.
Yeah. So, I'm really excited for this podcast episode because I did another podcast recently and released it. It's on the I Can Relate website and on YouTube. For anyone who hasn't seen it, it was with Keys. And it was really positive because you reached out and said that it was a great interview, podcast, should I say, which is brilliant to hear. And thank you for the feedback. You also said, which I held on to, that mental health doesn't discriminate. And I thought that was a fantastic point you made. And we had a conversation about it, and you literally went on to explain your reasons why. And because of that, I invited you onto this platform to share it with everyone because it was absolutely brilliant and mind blowing. So not to not to boost you too much before the podcast, but you have got some really, really relevant points, and I'm really excited, and I'm hoping that the audience are excited to hear what you have to say.
Thank you.
So let's begin. So mental health doesn't discriminate.
No, I would agree it doesn't. Anyone can have a mental health issue, no matter how old you are, doesn't matter how tall you are, how short you are, what colour your skin is, what your background is. Anyone and everyone can have a mental health issue.
Yes, I agree. And do you feel like, well, you've had experiences with your own mental health discrimination?
Yeah, I mean, growing up being a short person, as a male, it's always a challenge. Because when you're short as a man, it's like you don't quite have what's required. It kind of seems a bit off, but the kind of stereotypical man is tall, dark and handsome. I might be dark, but I'm certainly not tall. So it can make things difficult. And I've gone out with dates with girls before and I've been told you're too short. Which is kind of like one of the worst things to be told. It's like when it comes to being picked for sport or something, you get sidelined because you're short or because you don't look strong or you don't look fast or whatever. You're just sidelined. He's hopeless. Instantly a no. So you're getting refused for things just because of your height.
It's really interesting because before I spoken to you about it, before you mentioned this, I never had any idea that being short was made you a target for mental health.
It does. It's not just your height either. It's your build. I mean, I'm lucky I'm not fat particularly, because fat people get even more targeted, because of their weight. Especially if you're short and fat, you're like an instant target. You might as well put an abuse me sign on your forehead and just walk around the street with it, just because of you're an instant target. And it's sad that we live in such a cruel world. It's sad that people don't have more sympathy and understanding.
So you're kind of you're kind of saying that the direction it feels like we're steering in is that mental health can derive from weaknesses, but that people can consider weaknesses and they can bully you because of those weaknesses.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up with skin conditions, asthma, eczema, hay fever, being short. So I couldn't really run very fast. I had some coordination issues as a child as well, so I couldn't catch a ball. I didn't learn to catch a ball till I was at least maybe 18. So it took me a long time to learn certain tasks. So when it comes to sport, I was like a no-no. I was often beaten up and often targeted because, they were like an easy target. Because then you wouldn't fight back. See, that was the issue. Because there's no point having a fight with someone who's going to fight back because you're going to get hurt.
Yeah.
But if you fight someone who's not going to fight back, then it's game on, isn't it? So yeah, that was game on.
Oh,
You know. So yeah, I went through hell at school.
yeah. You did actually describe it as, you referred to school as a prison
Yeah,
in our recent conversation.
I would still say school is like a prison because you're forced to go there. You can only leave when you're told you can leave. Teachers are quite happy to keep you longer if they want to, and they're not always nice either. But yeah, your main enemies are your fellow students.
It's really interesting to hear your point of view, because some people go to school and they're like the most popular kids at school and they love it, but there are people who feel marginalised when they're at school, and you were one of them.
Certainly. When I started secondary school, I had 3 friends. They were all minority groups. I don't know exactly what countries they come from now, but some were black, some were other groups, but there were basically just 3 of us, 4 of us actually, 3 others. We were all bullied and attacked, and we just banded together. It didn't matter to me that they weren't white. I didn't see why it should. All that mattered to me was that they were willing to see me as a friend and didn't see me as a target. So that made me a friend of theirs.
Okay. And because you've actually said that you kind of have used friends as a coping strategy.
Yeah, of course.
So you buddied up with certain people.
Yeah, absolutely.
As a coping strategy.
Yes.
Yeah. So can you elaborate on that?
Well, it gives you someone to relate to or speak to. Someone to share what's going on with. It's also maybe finds a safe spot. Because it's like you know where they're gonna be. They know where you're gonna be, so you just go to them. So you're away from those that might target you. It's kind of like, and also when you're together with them, you're less likely to be targeted because you're not on your own. Because it's only really when you're on your own you're going to be singled out.
Yeah. And do you feel, because you did speak about, because of the bullying and because of low self-esteem and rejection, you did say that you did contemplate suicide?
Oh, many times. I've stood on the edge of a cliff and thought about it quite seriously. I've been tempted, but I think what's held me back from actually committing suicide is having good parental structure. I've always had a good mum and dad, and I think a home life is probably one of the most important things you can ever have. And I do feel really sorry for anyone who hasn't got a good home life, which I know there are many people out there who don't have a good home life. And if you haven't got a good life outside a home and you haven't got a good life in home, where is your good life?
Yeah.
Where do you find strength from? Whereas I always had strength from my mum and dad.
I was researching earlier actually, and they were saying I came across a study that said that people from broken homes were more likely to suffer from mental health.
Yeah, I would guarantee that's true.
And it just seems it's kind of it self-explanatory, really, because they've come from a broken home.
Yeah.
So, like anxiety, depression, a lot can steer from coming from a broken home.
You know what's even shocking, and when you look at it, it's quite scary. When I first went to school, and I'm not talking secondary school in the 80s, I'm talking primary school in the 70s. Now, I remember going to school, and I remember a lady's child being pointed out because that child was from a broken home. And it was like an odd child in the class being from a broken home. You balance that to today, it's probably maybe 70% of the children in the class are from broken homes compared to 1 in the whole class. So when you look at society, we're going down and going down fast.
Do you think we are, or do you think that, just to put it out there, do you think that it was masked more?
No, I think that our addiction to technology is partially destroying our personal relationships in life. I think people are becoming too addicted to Facebook, to Instagram, to other forms of communication. Since even if you go back to the evolution of the television, before the television, people would have gone out for almost every form of physical communication because they wouldn't have had this box to sit there and watch for hours on end and mull away time. They would have had to go out, and if you look at social groups since like the 30s up forward, you will find that more and more forms of social clubs have gone. And pubs have gone, bars have gone, pubs are almost half empty or almost empty whenever you go to one these days. Whereas even in the 80s, pubs were usually packed. I mean, I know part of it was the banning of cigarettes from pubs, because that was one of the biggest lures of a pub, was a place to smoke for smokers. Whilst I'm glad they are banned, because people like myself with asthma don't want to have our lungs destroyed. You can see the social collapse of places where people used to meet, socialise and get together. It's not happening as much as it used to, even though we have recovered mostly from COVID as a country. People are starting to go out a bit more than they did, but just trying to have normal relationships in life these days is very hard.
Yeah, I agree actually, because but as growing up, when we didn't have phones, and we'd meet up, socialise, go to the park, go to different events, and just socialise. It sounds so minimal, but it was just socialising. But we didn't have the technology that we have now to kind of separate us from that.
And it's weird because the technology's purpose was to bring us closer together, but yet
now we're so far apart.
It's true. Although you could speak to someone in almost anywhere on the world from your phone, which is amazing, it's still the convenience of being able to do it from home and not actually see that person.
Yeah.
Is almost causing you not to see that person.
Yeah. So we also spoke about loneliness and how that affects mental health.
Yeah, I would say loneliness is one of the toughest mental health problems anyone can ever face. Loneliness is dangerous.
It's really dangerous.
It can cause you to do things you wouldn't normally do. It can cause you to break your own moral code. Now, I know everybody has their own code as to what they would or would not do, but it's like every time you break that code, it comes with a cost, a personal cost to you. And it's not always recoverable. There will sometimes be long-term repercussions. Certainly some of the relationships I've gone into when I was younger have been a result of loneliness, and although I've been lucky, there haven't been much for personal cost to those sort of relationships. I've known those relationships have been unwise.
I've done the same, just to put it out there. So I can relate totally to what you're saying. Loneliness can drive you to do things that you would otherwise not do. So,
exactly.
Yeah. But so I appreciate you saying that, because like I said at the beginning of the podcast, you have some really relevant points that shared a lot of people can relate to. So I can relate to that.
I mean, the risks of loneliness is when you talk about people who are in gangs and stuff, people who follow those sort of connections, you follow someone so you don't have loneliness. I remember growing up, I had this friend he's still a friend now, but he's just not as much of a friend because there are certain things about his character that I don't like anymore, and I don't want to be a part of.
Yeah.
Although he's not a bad person, you know, he's not a gang leader, he's not a rapist, not a murderer, nothing particular. I mean, he only smokes weed, but it was just that when we were growing up through my teens and stuff, he would go out and decide to go on a vandalism rampage and start smashing up lampposts and causing trouble. And I'd find myself going along and doing it with him. And I'd be like thinking of the morning after, what the hell is wrong with me? Why would I do something that's so against me? Why would I do something so wrong? And I realised I was doing it to be his friend. And I thought, well, you know, if you need to do something like that to be someone's friend, then you're with the wrong friend.
Yeah.
You know, you shouldn't have to qualify yourself to have a friend. A friend should love you because you are you, not because you do what they do. And if what they do is wrong, as far as you're concerned, then you need to choose a different friend.
Yeah.
You need to find someone who shares your values and your strengths, not someone who values are completely different and, you know, contrary to what you would think is the right or wrong thing to do.
Wow, they're really wise words. It's true. It's true.
If only I'd listened to them back then.
Yeah, but that's life. You go through. Anyone can say that because you do things and you learn lessons and then you reflect and then you think, actually, yeah, I could have done that differently. But yeah, it's just again, that's like peer pressure, isn't it? What you're saying.
Well, it is. You know, you find yourself getting into a group of people, and you follow that group of people, and it gives you that feeling of being part of something rather than part of nothing. And I think it's worse for anyone who's a teenager or that sort of age group, maybe teenage to early 20s, where you need to still be the in person. You know, you have to be popular, and you do certain things to achieve that popularity. And it all seems right at the time. It's kind of weird. It's only when you're later on in life that you can look back and think, what a waste.
Yeah.
What a total waste. You did all those things to fit someone else's criteria.
Yeah.
And not your own.
Yeah.
And you did things that, you know, your parents wouldn't be happy to know you did.
Yeah.
You did things that you're not happy knowing you did. Things that could have put yourself at risk. You could have lost your job. You could have found yourself in jail. Could have suffered problems. I mean, certainly for me, I was at one end trying to be a civil servant and get a really good job in London. And at the other end, I was destroying my career and giving myself a possibility of ending up in jail. So, yeah.
Oh, wow.
It was kind of one extreme to the other at the same time. And you get to a certain point in life where you realise one of them has to be dropped.
Yeah.
And you don't want to drop the one that's going to push your career forward.
Yeah.
The one that's going to give you life and strength. But you do want to drop the one that's going to put you in jail or find yourself arrested or find yourself having to explain yourself to a police officer early in the morning why you did certain things you did, and rely on his niceness not to take it further, which is what happened to me. I was kind of lucky. We found a reasonably understanding police officer who was just like, well, these are a couple of kids being naughty, just we give them a talking to and see if they're calmed down, which is what happened. And after that, I just thought, you know what, I'm not doing this again.
Yeah. So you learnt.
I did. It was a good lesson, thanks to police officer.
So you learn, like, throughout life, like we said, you can go back and say, oh, I wish I did it differently, but you still learn lessons throughout. So as long as you recognise them as lessons, then they can be beneficial.
Definitely. You know, I think we learn from the moment we're born to the moment we die.
Yeah.
I think
Michelangelo says he's still learning when he's age 87.
Yeah. I think one person said that as long as you need help, you're alive, or you can give help.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's that. I think it's as long as you're learning, you're alive. because even a newborn baby, from the moment it opens its eyes, it's learning,
Yeah.
taking in information like a sponge,
Yeah.
and we're all learning all the time, whether we're giving information, whether sharing information, receiving information, we are learning. And I think that's for me, I'm not going to go with I think, therefore I am. I'm going to go with I'm learning, therefore I am.
Okay. Brilliant. I like that. But so we started the podcast with the premise that mental health doesn't discriminate, and we also, when we had our conversation recently, you spoke about having a midlife crisis, and a midlife crisis is defined as a period of emotional turmoil in middle age, just for anyone that doesn't know. So yeah, mental health doesn't discriminate. You did have a midlife crisis.
I did. I was in my 40s, and I realised that I suppose I didn't have a good relationship with anyone. I didn't have a child. My brother had children. My sister had children. I suffered from a lot of loneliness, and during that crisis, I suppose I found myself following stereotypical midlife crisis type activities where you'd sort of try anything to get into a relationship, whether it was sensible or not, and it's trying to get yourself a bad reputation a bit as a player, even though I never really played. I never cheated on anyone, never did anything like that, but people seem to have the impression that I would, or that I wasn't a good person to be around because I just seemed to flirt all the time. And it's like you're trying to replace something that's missing.
Avoid.
Yeah, that's it. Trying to fill it with anything that you can fill it with. And I think the only thing that keeps me on a reasonable straight and narrow now is having two wonderful kids. I think having them to love keeps me from loneliness. I mean, what I wouldn't do for a relationship right now, I would love one, but I don't think my lifestyle is suitable for one, because I don't think I've got the time to give that a relationship would want. It's kind of hard, but that's it in a nutshell. I did try one a while back and it didn't work, because she had a family, I had a family, and when I wanted to date her, she was busy. When she wanted to date me, I was busy, and it seemed to be all the time somebody was busy, and it just kind of faded as quickly as it started, really. So
Okay.
I think maybe, and it's harder to get into a relationship when you're in your 50s than it is when you're in 20s, I think.
Yeah.
And being in my 50s, I found a bit hard at first to kind of comprehend it.
Did it affect your mental health?
In a way, it's realising that you're kind of past your peak time. It's kind of weird, because like when you're in your teens or your 20s, it feels like you've got a life ahead of you.
Yeah.
That time is almost endless,
yeah,
if you like. But it's only when you suddenly get to 50 or 60, you suddenly kind of realise if there was a hill to walk up, you're now walking down the other side of that hill.
Oh, wow.
You know,
That's deep.
you've gone over the top, because that was your 40s.
Wow.
That was your midlife crisis,
Yeah.
when you realise you're at the top of the hill.
Yeah.
You're now walking down the other side.
Wow.
You realise that your eyesight isn't what it was.
Yeah.
You realise that you maybe have a few medical problems you didn't have when you were younger. Certainly that's the case for me. And those medical problems are not easy to live with. And, but saying that, I got parents who are in their 80s. They're still doing fine. They've got a lot more of the issues that are just starting with me. But I realise, I could still live another 30, 40 years. So it's not impossible for me to live to 90.
Yeah.
But still that peak time is gone.
Yeah.
whilst I don't think I look bad for someone in their 50s. You know,
No, you don't.
I haven't lost my hair.
No.
I haven't gone grey. There's a couple of little few hairs, but I
Yeah.
haven't gone grey. So, you know, it's not too bad. And I look at other people in their 50s. Some of them are better shape than me. Some are worse shape. But you know, my sister's younger sister's entering her 50s now. She still does marathons. So,
Wow.
you know, there's nothing to stop you.
You can have a second wind as well.
You can.
Yeah.
You know, there's nothing to stop you when you get older. It's just a case of, I think it's knowing your limits and working within them to expand them, and not going crazy.
Yeah.
I think my biggest problem at the moment is I love chocolate too much.
Oh, really? Okay, so for anyone who didn't know, something about Mike that no one knows is that you like chocolate.
Yeah, especially dark chocolate.
Oh, okay. Well, dark chocolate's apparently quite good for your mental health.
Is it?
Yeah, it helps to increase either the dopamine or the serotonin in your brain. Dark chocolate specifically. Just to let you know, yeah. So that's probably why, because you can get addicted to it, because you get that feeling of that rush of feel good.
I suppose a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. So just to let you know, but okay. So we've spoken about again. I just wanted to talk again, just because we spoke about it before, but I didn't mention it. But back to, and it is a sensitive topic, but back to suicide. And I know it is a sensitive topic, but I've also contemplated suicide myself, so I don't want you to sit here on your own and feel like you're the only one speaking about it. So I have considered it in the past, and got through it. But we spoke about what got you through it, and you said that it was your faith.
Yeah, I would say it's not just faith in God. I mean, whilst I have been a Christian all of my life, because I was brought up into the Christian faith, I haven't always been a good Christian. I'll admit that. I haven't always followed the faith either, but having a root in faith has helped. I would also go back to saying I have a good mum and dad who were there for me when I needed them, was also good. But there are times in life where you feel there is no hope, or you feel there's no one to turn to, or no one can really understand what I'm going through, or no one knows what it's like to be me. I can relate to that seriously.
I can relate to that.
Because I can remember growing up, especially in my teens. No, so mid-20s it was mid-20s, later than that. I developed a skin condition that was really quite serious. I didn't know how to handle it. And it was getting worse every day. Each day I'd wake up, there was less of me. I would leave a shell of myself in the bed of dead skin. The floor around me would be white of skin. I would have dandruff in my hair, dandruff in my clothes, dandruff on my shoes. I would be just covered in it. And every day I would feel weaker, more tired, because I wasn't sleeping at night. I'd wake up sometimes feeling wet, and it was really quite tough. And I had a manageress at the time who was really quite bullying, so I was getting quite mentally down, and I used to pray every night before I slept that I wouldn't wake up the next day, because I didn't want to wake up the next morning, because I knew I'd be worse. And yeah, it was so tough, you know. And to think that here I am now, fine, you know, it's happened long ago, but yeah, it was a really hard time to go through, and I was very suicidal at the time, but I couldn't actually commit suicide, so I wanted God to do it for me.
Okay.
I didn't want God to wait to let me live. I wanted to die, because I just wanted to get out of it. I wanted to stop what I was going through by any means whatsoever. And when I finally got well, I was angry, very angry, mad, if you like, that God didn't grant my wish, that God didn't take my life at that point, because I lived through it. I got through every day. But, I mean, eventually, I thank God that I am alive now, because I've got two wonderful boys, I've got a family, I've got a good career, I'm doing well in my life, but if I look back at that time, I can still feel the anger. I can still look at myself in the mirror, and I can still see fluid on my face where there would be skin, and like pus and stuff, and rub my fingers across my head, and like there'll be a pile of skin on my fingers, which there isn't now. It's fine. I mean, I still have skin trouble today. I have problems with my hands. I have to wear gloves when I shower. I have to put baby cream on my hands every day. Otherwise, my hands come up in cuts and bruises. They just split and they crack and get into a state. So I can't wash my hands as much as everybody else does. Sometimes I have to go without washing my hands, because if I do, I'm going to suffer the consequences.
Just going back to what you said about, because there's a massive, massive message in that, when you said that you went through hardships and you did want to commit suicide, but then now you're sitting here and you're okay. I just needed to say that to anyone who's listening, that you can go through hard times and feel like you're trapped, but they can get better. There is hope.
There is always hope. I know you hear it a lot in Star Trek and other movies and stories, that there is always hope, but I'm a true believer that there is always hope. I think too many times you listen to stories where people tell you there is no hope, for the human race, or no hope for yourself, or no hope for your country, or whatever. But I would say there is always hope. When you look at the strength people have shown in life, and you hear some of these great character stories on the news and so forth, these people have gone through hell, really gone through hell. When you look at some great people, like, say, Gandhi, or who would you say? I'm trying to think. Nelson
Mandela.
Nelson Mandela, yeah. When you think of people like that, that Nelson Mandela wasn't even his name anyway.
Oh, okay.
I can't remember what his real name is. I've forgotten. It's an African name. They called him Nelson after Lord Nelson.
Oh, okay.
He was named by his owners, I think.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
But when you think of people like that, they went through true hell, and they fought through it. They got through it, and they saved their countries, their people. They turned their futures around.
Yeah.
Because they remained strong and firm, and they got through it. And the thing is, to anyone out there right now going through hell, if you stay true to your course, you get through it, I believe you can turn it around. It may not be an easy journey. It probably isn't. In fact, I guarantee it isn't. But it could be you sitting here 20 years later, 30 years later, and looking at life and saying, you know what, thank God I stayed true to my course and I got through it. Thank God, it's not just another funeral I've had to attend because one of my friends has committed suicide, which is not a good thing to do, because suicide leaves too many questions.
Yeah.
And everyone else is trying to answer them when you're gone. And no one knows what those answers are because you're not there to answer the questions. Yeah. And it's really hard to deal with.
Okay, wow. That was really very well said. We've gone really deep, haven't we?
The conversations with me normally do.
We've gone really deep, but it's really positive because that's why there is this platform, because we need to raise awareness of mental health, of the impact that it can have on individuals, and we need to make it a general topic of conversation, everyday conversation. How are you? Are you really okay? You know, like really ingrain.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard, I think, when you have got a mental issue to face up to something, and to realise there are people you can relate to, there are people you can talk to, and there are people that are probably going through or have gone through something similar to what you've gone through. Maybe they haven't gone through exactly what you've gone through, because it's no two people's life stories are ever identical.
Never.
But, you know, it's so easy to think it's just me. It's so easy to think I'm the only one going through this. I'm the only one who understands. You know, I'm the only one who cares. But it's not true.
No.
It's so far from the truth. And yet it's what we tell ourselves. It's kind of weird. In some respects, when you've got a mental health issue, we become our own worst enemy.
Yeah.
We start to destroy ourselves
Yeah.
with negative talk, when we should be hitting ourselves with positive talk. I know there are lots of things out there where they talk to you about having a positive attitude and how it can change or put your life into a better state. Whilst I'm not an advocate of people who tell you false stories or people who give you false hopes, because there's a lot of people out there that will try to paint a utopia for you,
Yeah.
which doesn't really exist. But if you find genuine people that genuinely want to listen and genuinely want to care, they are out there, and you are not alone.
Wow. Okay, so as we've said before at the beginning of this podcast, mental health doesn't discriminate. You can be from any walks of life. You can be rich, you can be poor, you can be male, you can be female. You can be impacted by or affected by mental health. And it's amazing that we've got Mike here today to give his perspective of what it was like to be at the receiving end of mental health, of bullying because of being short and having eczema and asthma as well, isn't it?
Yeah,
And
asthma, short-sightedness. Oh, gosh, I was what is the word they use? A klutz growing up. You know, I was just like, I found everything so difficult. I was a bit of a social outcast, if you like.
Okay.
You know, and found it generally difficult. And the weird thing is, part of it was because I was maybe a tiny bit smarter than some of the other kids as well.
Okay.
Which may be another reason to be targeted.
Yeah.
Because when someone sells you something, you get it straight away, whereas other people might have to study to get it.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, fine, I'm bored now, I've got it. And others are angry at you because you've got something they didn't get. Or people decide, you know, because when you go to school, there are kids that are disruptive. There are kids that want to study. And the usually the ones that are disruptive are those that haven't actually understood what it is they're learning about.
Yeah.
And so they found an excuse not to learn because it's easier to avoid learning by being disruptive.
Yeah.
And the thing is, if you're not disruptive, they hate you.
Yeah.
And you find yourself, I should put it, getting more like them because you don't want to be hated. You don't want to be a target. So you do what they do.
Peer pressure again.
Yeah, in some respects.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, when I went to school, learning was not the product of school. School was a place to just get bullied or bully or, you know, do what they do to become part of them rather than do what's right for you or learn what you should learn or, you know, and I speak to people that went to the same school as me, same time as me. I mean, some of them are successful now. I'll be honest with you, some of them are doing some very good jobs. But most of them tell me that when they left school, They had no qualifications. They had nothing. They were lucky that maybe they found an apprenticeship. Maybe they went through good school, good jobs, or maybe they met good people that pointed them in direction. But a lot of them say to me that, if they hadn't met the right person or hadn't gone down the right roads, that they'd either be in jail or dead. And that's a sad thing when you think you went to an ordinary, everyday school, that's the way schools are. They're not good places of learning, which they should be a good institution for learning. They're just institutions of chaos.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. Okay, so I just wanted to let everyone know before we close this podcast episode that we aren't professionals. We are individuals sharing our own lived experiences, and people can relate and people can't relate. It's either or. And I just wanted to say a huge thank you again to Mike for joining our platform and sharing your perspective and your experiences and your knowledge about mental health with the world. So I just wanted to say a massive thank you. I appreciate you so much. And just thank you again.
Thank you, Zoe, for the opportunity to come on and share it. I hope I haven't talked too much, but because I tend to talk too much. But anyway, I will say good night.